right, so we're going to look at recycling, why, what, when, and how. Obviously, we've talked about the 4 R's. You can go on forever. You can come up with 6, 7, 8 R's if you want to. But the basic idea is to reduce. Reduce our consumerism and reduce the amount of recyclable stuff, reusable stuff that's being put into what we use anyway. That's the integrated cycles thing. Reuse, can we actually repurpose it, reuse it into something else? Recycle, and then the 4th one is the biggest one, which is compost or rot. And that's the one we'll find out as we get into this. The big problem is, what are we doing with our green waste? Our clippings, our food waste. You'll see in a moment, it's a huge part of what we're throwing away. And locally, we don't even have bins for that, right? LA does. Los Angeles has a separate green bin, and it's literally a green color. I just found out yesterday, all our regular garbage is going to now, over time, be in black bins, so it doesn't get confused with the color green. So they're going to be black. We're going to have green, black, and blue. Green will be for green waste, things that grew. That's what green waste is.
The grass, the shrubs.
Yeah. And food, right? Okay. No civilization has saved the ongoing destruction of its natural support system, nor will ours. We've, I think, seen this already. Why recycle? Recycle to be sustainable, right? I told you, what did I tell you? You're going to hear sustainable over and over again until you're like, I'm just so tired of hearing sustainable. Hopefully not. Okay? This is the 3rd principle. One of the 3 big principles of environmental sustainability is that everything in nature recycles. Okay? They're closed loop systems. We're not. As a society, we're a consumer. Make it, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to throw it away. That is a straight line. That is not a loop. And we want to close that loop, and so that most of what we use actually can get reused or recycled. Okay, so here's the picture of the carbon cycle. Carbon's super important, right? We are made up of water and carbon, right? All the molecules in us are chains of carbon, okay? Is that on I wonder if it's on maybe it's on one of those timers I didn't know about. So CO2 cycle. CO2 is taken up by green plants, and anything with chlorophyll type in it will produce photosynthesis. It's basically taking the CO2 and making it into a chain of carbon. That might be glucose, sugar, it might be a starch, it might be the lignin to make the fiber in this tree, and eventually that's called organic carbon. That's the stuff we were just talking about. That's that green waste, right? And it's going to be put in the soil, and it's going to decay. And then that carbon is going to be able to be recycled back up. We're going to use those carbon chains for food, like glycogen, glucose. We're going to power our cells, give us energy. We're going to make proteins out of it. And then we're going to respire, through respiration, we're going to respire CO2 back into the cycle. What we've done, though, is we've upset it because we've come along with fossil fuels that are also carbon chains. And so we're adding extra carbon into the cycle. Not just as CO2, but with things like methane. And we're going to talk when we get to green waste about methane, CH4. CH3, I think it is actually. CH3 methane. If you have one molecule of CH up here, which is propane, that kind of molecule, right? Methane, propane. It's 25 times better at reflecting the sun's rays back to Earth, right? So let's just quickly use the same slide really quickly to show greenhouse effect. The atmosphere with greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, water, methane, lots of other gases, act as your windshield on your car or the plastic on a greenhouse. The high energy light waves come in, they hit the ground, those are ultraviolet and all of those, they hit the ground and they lose energy. They actually deposit some of the energy by heating us up and heating plants and the earth up, right? Then they reflect back actually as lower energy, infrared, mostly waves. And those infrared waves are not as powerful, and they can bounce off these molecules and bounce back. So just as it does in your car where it bounces in, then hits your windshield and bounces back, and if you kept your dog in there, you know, bad things happen, so you make sure you don't do that. Yeah, I was going to say something really crazy, but I won't. If you leave your kid in there, it's not as bad, but no, it's just where society is. But anyway, we'll move on from there. So it reflects back, that's the greenhouse effect. And we've just added a lot more to this. And green waste is particularly bad because if it's not properly composted, it produces methane. And methane, like I said, 25 times. So if there's one CO2 molecule and one carbon, you might as well say there were 25 CO2 molecules there instead of that one methane molecule. Okay? So there's certain ways that we can really, really help. And one of them is by composting and not putting green waste out on dumps. Okay? Out on our waste disposal sites. Okay? Why recycle helps the environment? Recycling keeps the Mojave area beautiful. Recycling diverts waste from the landfill. That's a big one. Recycling supports business and creates jobs. We've got a whole presentation on all the jobs that are created around recycling. It's tremendous. The things you would never think of. All the people that are making new things and out of what we're recycling. What is recycling? Managing resources to reduce our waste garbage from going into landfills or incinerators. Do we have any incinerators around here? I don't think so. We, in the West, we actually just put it in a dump. We don't burn it, right? Back east, they actually burn it, okay? So here's just some of the ways, some of the things we see that have to do with recycling. We're gonna get more into that, okay? Natural resources, we need to think about what we're using in terms of our resources. Some of them are renewable, and some of them are non-renewable, like minerals and fossil fuels. How is garbage created? I think we all have an idea. We use something up, and then we either use it up completely, or we just decide that its day is done, or we don't like the color of that tomato. It just doesn't look good, so we don't eat it and we throw it away. Okay? Nothing from something is kind of a cool way to look at it. We can take all this metal, we can recycle. This is an example picture of a materials recycling facility like the one we have in Victorville, where things are being sorted. Everything goes in your blue container. We'll talk about that. Apparently, several of you people have visited one of those. And then we make a new product. What's interesting, if you start looking at some of the statistics, it takes 10 times less energy to recycle a can. In other words, recycle a can, make a new can out of recycled material, as it does from taking it and mining the bauxite, which is the mineral that produces aluminum, and then extracting that and making a can from start. So it's 10 times more efficient energy-wise to recycle your Coke cans, for example. Pretty interesting, I think. Isn't that interesting? Okay, cool. Right, repurposing bicycles. How many people even know how to change a flat on their bike, or they just throw it away when it gets a flat? My son wants to throw it away when it gets a flat. He's like, I can't fix that thing. I need to buy a new one. No.
Whole new bike or a whole new tire?
Well, yeah, but he wants to get a whole new bike. That's not very good. Okay. Nothing out of something. Our food waste goes into compost. Amazing. This recycling that, keeping the methane out of the dump. But now it's making this essential, super balanced nutrient for our soil to make more food. So there's certain activities we can do that are super, have multiple payoffs, right? And compost is one of those. There's so many payoffs for composting, right? So just some pictures of recycling activities. Actually garbage, waste reduction or waste. So what are all these guys? Is that flying debris or what are those things? Huh?
Those look like seagulls.
Yeah. So did I tell you my thing about ravens? Okay. Okay, so I won't get into that.
Would you rather have ravens or seagulls?
They're both bad, but ravens are worse. Ravens are, because ravens are this awesome predator, raptor. They're quite crazy. Have you ever really looked at the beak on that thing? I don't want to come up one-to-one with one of those things. They'll hurt you. Okay, materials recycling facility. This is a photo I just took last week, or maybe beginning of this week, at our materials recycle facility. It's in Victorville, down on Abbey Lane, and it's high tech. The thing we need to tell people about recycling is, yeah, there's lots of people working on this. It's very sophisticated. There's super sophisticated things. They've got light laser technology that can tell the difference between cardboard and plastic. Did you guys notice that when you went? And then as soon as it detects plastic, it sends this squirt of air, this and blows the plastic off into a different area. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's like a living organism. But, you know, we're standing there, and it's all about, do we put the right things in? So we're up there with the manager, and John, my son's doing this video, so he's videoing, and there's, at every level, 4 to 5 different times, there's people actually taking all the stuff that you shouldn't have thrown in there. That dirty pizza box that you shouldn't have thrown in there. That plastic bags. Plastic bags are really bad, right? Big log. I got a picture of this big piece of wood, you know, a baby chair. What do you call those things? Baby seat, right? Oh yeah, thank you. Baby, there's a baby seat. But we're standing there, and he's talking about it, and the machines get stopped up, and the conveyor belt stops, and we look down, and there's this clump of fish hooks, and he was just talking about how dangerous this is, because when we put fish hooks in the blue can instead of the garbage can, or needles is huge. Once in a while I get a whole package of needles. Well, are those needles safe? Of course they aren't. There could be all kinds of issues going on with those needles, right? But so it's really important, really, almost to visit one of these and give us an idea that, yeah, it really does count. That A, the stuff is getting sold, and B, if we do a good job, we can make a huge difference just by recycling. There's a little video here from the state folks on how to recycle, why to recycle. What's up with our waste? Kind of interesting. Here's the curve of per capita. We're not making too much more waste over the last few years. There's 1960 to 2012. It's going up a little bit, but what's up with this? This is the total amount of waste. Why is the total amount of waste? This is California. Why is it so much more the total amount? More people, right? Yeah. You guys have figured out already that of all the problems, the biggest environmental problem is too many people, right? It's a sad way to say it, but really everything that happens comes down to we just have a lot of people that we're trying to work with and trying to be sustainable for. So they all have a future. So quickly, what are the tons? And this is not meant to, you're not supposed to remember the tons, but just give you an idea of the total amount, how much of it gets recycled. Less than half gets recycled, very small percentage gets compost. Waste to energy, that's where we actually burn stuff, or we can compost it. In some of the facilities back east can actually extract the methane when it decomposes and comes off the dumps. At our dumps, you'll see a burner. They have a chimney, and you see them just burning it off. Well, you can recycle that. If you go to the Victor Valley Wastewater Recovery System, VVWRA, they are actually decomposing, lost exactly the right word, all the organic matter and producing enough methane that they're carbon neutral. They produce all their own energy, electricity to run that plant from decomposing the waste material that they have. Okay. Recycling rates, it's kind of interesting. Why do you think lead acid batteries are so high? Goes back to what you guys were asking. We were asking about: are there financial incentives? That's because you get paid for these, right? I don't think it's because people realize. I would love to think that they realize that lead acid batteries are really bad for the environment. The lead is, and so is the sulfuric acid, but it's because you get paid for them, right? Steel cans, they're worth a lot, especially aluminum. So when you take aluminum cans or your paper, guess what? You take a whole garbage can of paper and you get like 5 cents at the recycle. You take cans and you get a lot more. So newspaper, yard clippings, rod trimmings, that's amazingly high to me. Aluminum beer cans and soda cans, tires, glass containers. I don't think we're that good at this. When we did a major cleanup in our area with our community groups, the amount of tires we found were unbelievable. PET, which is a special class of plastic, and da-da-da-da. Okay. Total waste generation, 251 million tons. This is, I'm not sure if this is for US or not, I presume it's for USA, but it's just kind of showing you the breakup of what's in there. Paper and cardboard is big, food waste, yard trimmings, plastics, and you're kind of looking at what makes up our trash. Another way of looking at it is by the product category. Containers and packaging, right, is really big, especially now that we're all buying this stuff online. I was asking the manager there on Monday, have you seen a lot more in cardboard? And he said, yeah, absolutely. People are buying online. So, they ship the product to Google, or not to Google, Amazon, whoever you're buying online from, and they often repackage it. So you're actually getting things packaged twice now to get them to your house because of online purchasing. Okay. Food waste, yard trimmings, durable goods, those are things that you can recycle, things like TVs and electronics. Non-durable goods, things that you use like shampoos and that. Waste composition, residential, I think we're beating up the same idea here. Just there's certain areas that we can really make a difference, and one of them is in recycling, and the other one is the type of recycling that's composting. I guess that's the word I'm trying to get out to. Okay, so this is important. Now we're going to quickly get into the recycling itself. Of the recycling that we're able to do, how much of it is these different categories. As you can see, the biggest one is paper and paperboard, like cardboard. Okay, huge area. Yard trimmings, huge area. This is all right now going to the solid waste dump for us. We're not recycling, composting. At the MRF, the Material Recycling Facility, affectionately known as the MRF, they are building a big composting facility right behind it. The guy said it'll be done in about a month. But unfortunately, it'll be kind of voluntary. It'll be the big landscape companies, schools, people like that, commercial operations. You can take your green waste there yourself and dump it off to be recycled. He wasn't sure if you'd get charged a tipping fee the way you are charged at the dump right now, but so we'll see. Okay, landfills. Just really quickly, if you don't know already, what are some of the big problems? Why do we, apart from the fact we're wasting that stuff and can't reuse it or recycle it, what are some of the problems at the dump? Methane, very strong greenhouse gas, right? We talked about 25 times worse as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Compactors, okay? And what that's about, if you've been to the dump, how many people actually have been to our local dump to dump off their stuff? Yeah, it's pretty cool. I try not to take my wife to the dump because if I do, I have to keep her seatbelt on because she wants to jump out and go grab everybody else's junk and take it back to my house. So I try to keep her under control when I go there. Mostly I don't take her because of that. No, just joking. But they compact it. They've got this big wheel thing with these massive wheels and they compact it. And we don't need to get into it now, but that's what causes anaerobic conditions. When you compost something, you keep turning it and you get the oxygen and the air in there, and that composts it and keeps the carbon in the compost. If you don't have air, it's called anaerobic. Aerobic has air, oxygen, anaerobic doesn't. And that is what makes smelly compost and also produces a lot of methane. So when they compact it, that's what happens. And what they've been doing up till now is every day they put all the garbage in with green waste in it, and then they come along with a cap. And it looks like mulch. You'll see, if you look up in the dump, you'll see this brown layer that they put over the top. Well, that's green waste. That's mulched up clippings and branches and all of that. And that's just to hold the garbage from blowing away, just to hold it in place. As of next year, they're not going to be able to do that anymore. That is not allowed anymore. So they're going to have to compost it. We're going to have to find a way to use it. Either compost it or use it as a mulch. A mulch is just a covering for a garden, for you guys, for example, in the Apple Valley, that isn't composted. It's just the material that actually is being ground up. But it helps. It covers the soil, keeps it cooler, keeps as much evaporation from happening. Landfill, food scraps, garden waste create acids. So they're actually lined. They have a plastic liner. If you drive out there right now, they're developing a new area, and you'll see this massive plastic liner. Because we don't want, you know, those pharmaceuticals that you threw away, or, you know, the solvent that you used to clean your drains, and you just threw it in the garbage. We don't want or need that getting into our groundwater, okay? And that's called leachate. Okay, stuff that leaches through. Guess what's cool for us? We don't get any rain, so therefore we don't get a lot of things leaching through because there's nothing to drive it through. But in other parts of the country, this is a really big deal. Okay? Talked about how it takes a whole infrastructure, it takes education, policies. They have to have these policies, like the new green waste policy they just brought in. We have to have clean manufacturing. We have to have zero waste community programs. They're now calling this new push, have for a while, zero waste. Will we ever get to zero waste? Of course not. But we're trying to get to a place where we're at least recycling as much as possible and doing all kinds of recovery infrastructure, like the MRF, like your blue container is a recovery, part of the recovery infrastructure. And there's empowered citizens that want to do this and know how to do it. Okay? Okay, when do we recycle? Well, we start now. We're running out of resources. We're polluting our water, air, and land. So that's the great thing about recycling. Not only are we making new things and changing things and making compost, but it's probably one of the easiest and best ways that we can prevent water, land, and air pollution, which whether you're with the climate change thing or not, I think we all know now that the climate is changing. Whatever the reason, whether it's man-made or not, it is changing. Starvation, people are literally, because we aren't recycling, composting, literally have food issues, health issues, okay, resource issues, because that create war and chaos in various country because people just aren't getting the necessary things that they need. Okay, so this one is just looking at the infrastructure, and it's immense. We just get used to it. We just throw the garbage out, don't throw it out, but pull it out on the morning that it's going to get picked up. But there's a whole system behind this and lots of jobs. The most important ingredient right there is you. Unless somebody actually does that, then nothing's going to happen. Okay? How to recycle? Easy as 1, 2, 3. The right stuff. We want to keep the recycling streams free of contaminants. We talked about plastic bags, food, fish hooks, needles. I guess diapers are a massive problem. Another huge problem that's just started now are those new shipping envelopes. You know, when you get something online, it comes in an envelope. A lot of people think those are recyclable. They aren't currently. Sort it out. So Dana from Victorville especially is a big advocate of this, and I have to say we've probably only had this in our house the last few years, but it's not practical unless you're the kid, I guess, and your parents tell you take each little piece out to the recycling container. You got to sort it inside the house. So you've got to have a spot for the bottles and the cans and the paper to go inside the house. And that could be, you know, an old basket, it could be a cardboard box, but it has to happen inside the house, because what they're finding, if it doesn't happen inside the house, then it's not going to happen. And you know, you're going to say, oh, okay, Mom, I'm taking that out the recycle can. You go out there and you're like, is it the blue can or the green can? And you know, I really don't care, or whoever's doing it, and they just throw it anyway. Or what if the green can's full? How many of us have thrown it in the blue can because the green can was full? Fess up. Thank you, Chloe, Zoe. Yes. Oh, you're fessing up too?
No, I have a question.
Just
Other than
check.
asparagus,
Yeah, yeah.
They say they sort it.
Yeah.
Is there stuff we can do at home?
That is a great question.
Because I'm not sure I always believe.
Right. So there's two main kinds of recycling systems. Hesperia, which in the resource world we're not too impressed. I'll just say that. I'm not too impressed. They are called a dirty MRF system. And they'll get mad if you tell this, but I've actually been there and we've told them. And we've talked about it. They don't like that word. But in the industry, there's a dirty MRF and a clean MRF. A dirty MRF means you throw everything in one container, right? You guys only have one container.
Yeah.
And then when it gets to the other side, they sort it. And they try. But they don't have anything better than this MRF that we have in Victorville for the other communities. The more I'm getting nasty now. The more advanced communities, other than Hesperia, right? Now I'm being really, I shouldn't say. Anybody have on the city council here from Hesperia? But they throw it all together, and then we ran into a big problem because at the Resource Conservation District where I serve, we look at issues like this. And so the community of Lucerne Valley came to us and said, you know what, we're getting these massive amounts of mulch dumped on the land. They were actually paying people to allow Hesperia, that company, will go unnamed, to dump it in Lucerne Valley. So we called them up and we went over there and we talked about, well, the problem is when they dumped this cover material, shouldn't have dumped it all on one property. They were going to use it in the jujube orchards or whatever in some cases. But when they dumped it, it has lots of glass in it. It's got lots of plastic, lots of everything, because that stuff, plastic and little pieces of glass and all of that, can only be sorted by hand. And so what you've done now is taken massive, bigger responsibility to try to do that by hand, and it's just not possible. That little piece of plastic that's this big, if it's not recycled up front, it goes in bottles, they get broken down even smaller. Can you understand? When thrown in the garbage and then transported over there and thrown on those conveyor belts, it gets worse and worse. So what comes out the other end of a dirty MRF is also still very dirty. And so it's not the best practice. What I would say, what they should be advocating, is that you guys recycle your stuff by taking it directly to a recycling facility. And hopefully they've set up a lot of those. If you go to the MRF down here in Victorville, which serves 9 communities, right? It serves, around here it serves Adelanto, Apple Valley, Victorville, and then it serves Big Bear Lake and 29 Palms and Needles. But as you pull in, if you've ever been to the MRF, you'll notice they've got separate bins. Here's your TV, here's your electronics, all the stuff we're going to talk about now, that there are ways to recycle them, but it's not in your green, it's not at the home level, it's not in your green or your blue trash can, right? Because we're not set up to handle it there. If you throw, as I saw the other day, if you throw a whole computer into the trash, they just pull it off at the MRF. They put it in a separate bin and then send it the right way for you, but all it does is clog up the system, and that's the problem with the dirty MRF. Does it make sense? So you have to recycle it yourself, and I'm not sure how proactive Hesperia is in getting that message out to the people. Yeah, that's another problem. Sort it out, make it easy, do it in your house, drop it in, actually take the time to drop it in there, because it really does make a difference. Okay? Empty all the cans and bottles before you get out there, before you do it. Get the container out there by 6 a.m. in the morning. The kids are all awake by then anyway, so, right? Aren't the kids all awake at 6 a.m.? You know? So, and set it out there a little way from the curb, soiled or wet paper. He was talking about the day we went there, I guess it was Monday, because he said when it rains, then all the paper clogs together and it's an absolute mess. So don't put soiled or wet paper in the containers at all. What are the 5 classes of actually recyclable? We're talking at Curbside now. We're not talking about what you can take to other places. Cardboard and paper, plastic containers, glass containers, metal cans and trays, and then stuff that has an actual California redemption value. Soda pop or beer or whatever it is that has a CRV value. Okay, that's what recycled at the curb. Yes, Daniel?
What if you end up having just like one of those big old black metal dumpsters and like you don't have like the difference between green and blue? Like what can you do?
Yeah, so you I know where you live. That's either a good thing or a bad thing, right? No, I'm just kidding. You live in the county, so you've probably contracted with someone, you have, with the same company, Burtec, to have an actual dumpster, right? And so what you have to do is same thing as Hesperia. You have to pull that, your recyclables out before that, because that dumpster's gone one way, straight to the dump. There's nothing you put in that dumpster is ever gonna get recycled. When it gets to the dump, you have people there, if you notice, they're pulling off some of the really valuable things, but they can only do very little, right? Before that big, the big caterpillar runs you over. I'm always afraid that it's gonna run me over. Okay. Cardboard and paper, we're gonna go through these pretty quickly. What are the different types of paper and cardboard? Break up the cardboard, lay it flat. Plastic containers, the PET, the number 1, HDB number 2, rigid containers, 1, 2, and 3. Another one are those new, we call them clamshells, that you get your raspberries and strawberries in, those little things that close over on top of each other. You can recycle them, they can go in there. Plastic bags and plastic film, you don't recycle them. They don't go in the recycle bin. But, I don't know if you know this, but the grocery stores are supposed to have a place where you can recycle those. Some grocery stores do and some don't, where you can actually take, here's my whole bag of bags, and they will recycle them for you. So you can also call this number. If you can't find a store that accepts plastic bags, please call 1-800-EUROCYCLE, because they've got a program for that. Okay, metal cans and trays. There you go. Bottles. Okay, they've got screens and sorting system to get most of the glass. Only when it gets really tiny size are they not able to recycle it. Where does this happen? This is the MRF that we're talking about, but we saw the picture of inside it a little while ago. Recycling for cash. So that would be, Daniel, what we mostly do with that kind of recycling, we recycle the stuff we can get decent money for. So you'd be hopefully recycling your cans and the bottles that have CRV. But if you also did your paper, you can take them, we'll pay you a little bit for them. Or you can take them to a place where they at least take them, at least recycle them. Okay, CRV, the types of things that have CRV. California redemption value, that's what CRV say. Buy recycled and close the loop. So look for things that are actually recycled. They'll have this little thing on it, or they have that little triangle on it. E-waste can be recycled. There's apparently a huge market here for people who want to get into this business. This was being sent somewhere else. Some really bad behaviors would be things like frying oil. What do you do with it? Well, you don't put it in your trash. There's a hazardous waste drop-off facility, right? There's one in Apple Valley. I think there's one in every city. Ours is open on Saturdays. We just went there last week. And it's open from like 10 to 2. And you show up there and tell them what's in the back of your truck or whatever, and they'll recycle it for you. So that's where you would recycle your oil. Oil, by the way, if you throw it down the sink, is really, really bad, either in the dump or down the sink. Because if it gets to the wastewater treatment plant, it messes up their whole microbial, bacterial system down there. Really, really bad. They can actually tell when it's been Thanksgiving, because the next day their whole system goes haywire because people have thrown down a bunch of frying oil and fat and stuff. Paint, motor oil, special programs, you can go take it to the hazardous waste place. Mattresses, they'll pick up large items and they recycle them. The one that's really cool that I didn't know, did you know that there's a California carpet recycling program? And apparently, again, not necessarily very available, but you can look up to where you can actually take your carpet and they'll recycle it. So, thank you.